Get on the ground with the...
What did he do, sir?
What did I do? What did I do?
You guys put up with you, sir?
No.
Mind if I check?
No. He can.
Well, we can too.
No, you can't.
Yes, we can.
Would you like me to get on the ground? Would you like me to...
All right, we are here talking about police and citizen interactions. This is the Underdog Research Channel. Have a great conversation for you about the First Amendment or disorderly conduct. This is an interesting conversation. I will have both perspectives for you today. Now, let me give you a little bit background of what we're going to talk about. There was an event that was in Redding, California called the Kool April Night. And this event is held each year, where it's basically a huge car show and people come around to watch this event. Now, to give you a better understanding about what happened before this police citizen interaction, let me tell you about the people we will talk about in this particular story. First, we're going to talk about the citizen, Norman Valdez. Now, Norman has been going to this event for years. Now, this part is not included when you're doing the research on this conversation. What you need to know is what happened before the video started being recorded. So I'm going to give you a breakdown of what happened. Now, in this particular event in California, there is volunteers and there are government employees who work for the police department who assist in allowing people to go in and help keep an order, if you will, in non-arrest related functions. Now, those individuals are broken down into two groups, and it's going to be important to know that. First is the CSOs, community service officers. Now, again, these are civilians, non-sworn employees hired by the city of Redding Police Department. They typically earn about $50,000 to $68,000 a year and undergo a background and drug screening and are covered under different retirement. And they handle non-emergency calls, traffic control, incident reporting, event staffing, but do not carry arrest authority like sworn officers. And the second group are called the Redding Police Explorers. Now, they're typically aged 14 to 21. They are a voluntary group and they have rank structure just like regular police officers, and they volunteer. Now, you need to understand this because the person here, Mr. Valdez, this incident which took place in California, his first interactions was with those two individuals who are working this event called the Kool April Nights. And when he and his spouse were driving into a particular location, what happened was he was stopped and not allowed to park. What he states is he observed that this group of individuals, these explorers, the volunteers, and the CSOs didn't allow him to park, but allowed others to park. In response, he parked further away and he walked back. And that's where a incident occurred between him and these individuals. From what was reported, there was an argument that ensued where he was unhappy about what he saw with them allowing certain people to park, but him not being able to park. And he said that on the second time he interacted with them, not when he was in his car and they didn't allow him to park, but on the second time he interacted with them, he cussed at them and he admitted to doing that. Now, at some point, this is where another person comes into the story, which is the purpose of this conversation, Officer Jacob Ruiz. Now, this is an off-duty police officer with the Redding Police Department. Now, during his interactions, he was there at the beginning, and which is unrecorded, where he said something to Mr. Valdez at this point. And accordingly, he said something to the words of what has been reported that you need to get out of here or you'll be arrested. Now, he is in his off-duty capacity, and from what was reported, he may or may not have actually shown a badge, but he brandished his weapon underneath his shirt is the reports being stated by at least Mr. Valdez. Now, this is where the video is about to start. And I'm going to show you and walk through what we saw, and you're going to be able to look at that. And then I'm going to give you Mr. Valdez's perspective, and we're going to go through that. And I'm going to break down the legal aspects of this. So that's first talk about who else you'll see in the video. We're going to see a off-duty officer who is not named yet with the Shasta County Sheriff's Department, and a active officer that was on duty with the Reading Police Department who's in uniform. And again, this is taking place at this particular event called the Kool April Classic Car Show, and that's what we're seeing here. So now let's watch this full video and see what we see, and let's talk about it. Here we go.
Get on the fucking ground, motherfucker.
What did he do, sir?
What did I do? What did I do?
You're obstructing a public officer is what you're doing.
No, I did not. I didn't do nothing. Officer Ruiz, Reading Police Department police officer. So nothing but the children and the women. I didn't do nothing.
What did he do, officer? 415 subject.
I didn't do nothing.
Shasta County Sheriff's Deputy
Yes.
Opportunity. What did he do?
I didn't do nothing.
Okay. Get
Tell
away.
him to quit touching me.
Get away from the women and the children. And
He did nothing but exercise his First Amendment right, and this guy came up and assaulted him.
on. That's 415 PC. You got a cop coming right now.
Tell him to quit touching me.
You guys put up with you, sir?
No,
Mind if I check?
no. He can.
Well, we can too.
No, you can't.
Yes, we can.
No.
Yes, we can. I have identified myself, and so is he.
No, you do not.
Yes, I did.
Quit touching me. I did not do nothing. Would you like me to get on the ground? Would you like me to... You're hurting me. I can't breathe. I am not wrong. Take my left wrist. I am not resisting.
You are resisting.
No, I'm not. That's why I'm trying to read. What did I do?
You didn't listen. I told you to leave multiple times.
I was waiting for my wife.
You could have waited down the road, and you refuse.
It's a public place.
It's not a public place when you're on screaming at young kids. Those are children. Those are young children.
No, they're not.
Yes, they are.
Can I get up?
No. Like you guys are gonna.
Yeah, I'm with them. Bye.
We just saw the full video. That's it. Now, there's a couple things that were muffled, but I'll tell you what he said. At one point, when he was on the ground after being taken down by the three officers, two off duty, one uniformed officer, he says, "I can't breathe." And he also says, "Your knees on half of my chest or my lungs." And so he says that statement. But was able to capture everything else. I was able to remove the background noise and ambient noise so you can focus on what was being said. Because it's important if we can't evaluate it without hearing what was said, because context matters. Now, let's talk about something really specific legally about this particular incident. That's all we have. And I gave you the information about what happened before this incident. Remember, this is after he had walked back. He had parked his vehicle. The first incident where he had an exchange of words is not captured. And this is after he admitted that he had cussed them in the reports I've read. And this is what happened. So the people he cussed at, again, were the Reading Police Department, aged between 14 and 21 years old, and the CSOs, government employees hired by the police department, who have non-arrest authority but do duties with the local police department. Now, I want to bring something up, and then we're going to get to his side. I want you to check out something that was said.
Get on the fucking ground, motherfucker.
What did he do, sir?
What did I do? What did I do?
You're obstructing a public officer is what you're doing.
No, I did not. I need police department police officers.
All right. So I wanted you to catch what he just said. He says, you're obstructing. This is at the very beginning. We see the officer, Jacob Ruiz, from the Reddington Police Department pushing and shoving him at this particular point. And he was continually to push and shove Mr. Valdez. And all of a sudden, after he tells Mr. Valdez he's obstructing these officers, and he's referring to the CSOs, he's referring to the explorers, he's referring to Mr. Valdez cursing at them. He then tells him his identity. He identifies himself, but he has already pushed him several times. Now, I think this is important because let's talk about what the obstruction is legally. Now, obstructing a public officer under the California Penal Code that he was quoting, number 148, is a willfully resist, delays, or obstructs a public officer or EMT in the discharge of their duties. Knowledge that the person was an officer or EMT. Now, this is huge, and I think we need to talk about this. Context, timing matters. Remember, there was an incident not recorded where Valdez, the citizen, states that he drove to the area where the CSOs and the explorers, the volunteers, were sitting. They denied him access with his parking of his vehicle. He went somewhere else about a 2-minute walk away, parked his vehicle, came back on Mo and Joe, his feet, and he confronted them, and he admitted that he had cursed at them because he saw them let other people in the place that he was denied access to. And he cusses at whom? The CSOs, who are public servants, employees hired by the police department, and volunteers in a program ran by the Reddington Police Department. Now, the Reading Police Department is a part of this, and you need to understand the context of who he's cussing at. And he's cussing at them at a public place. And now we have Officer Ruiz, who is stating that because of that action, that he was obstructing them by his words. So we need to evaluate that a little bit deeper. Is that obstruction? No, that is not obstruction. And I will give you the reasons why, but let's keep watching and get a little bit more information.
The children and the women. I didn't do nothing.
What did he do, officer?
415 subject,
I didn't do nothing.
Shasta County Sheriff's Deputy
Yes.
Opportunity.
What did he do?
I didn't do nothing.
Okay. Get
Tell
away,
him to quit touching me.
get away from the women and the children, and
He did nothing but exercise his First Amendment right, and this guy came up and assaulted him.
That's 415 PC.
Oh man, we are on it. So now we have a problem already. So we started off with the penal code that was being thrown out by Officer Ruiz was that he was obstructing the public officers from doing their job by him cursing. But then we find out that the reason is because of them being women and children. Women, the two CSOs, so you know, are women in this circumstance who receive a salary, who work for the local government and their capacity, and the 14 to 21-year-olds who are in a program run by the local government, which is community service, And Mr. Valdez crime, well, he was using profanities, which he admits to publicly. Well, if you can see that, it doesn't fit the obstruction because you can have profanities that you use under your First Amendment rights. But then Officer Ruiz says something else. He accuses him now, within a few seconds after he's pushing him, the citizen, of being a violation of Penal Code 415 in California. So what was that? But first, let's talk about this free speech. Free speech to the First Amendment. Under the First Amendment, most forms of speech, including offensive or profane language, are protected, even if they provoke anger or discomfort. The case that established this, the Supreme Court, was Cohen versus California of 1971. So we have a problem already because Ruiz, the officer off duty, has already admitted two things. One, that it was the cursing that he deemed to be obstruction to the police who were the CSOs who have no law enforcement capabilities, and the volunteers. And then two, the reason why, because he wanted him not to cuss at the women and children, his words, not mine. And he then stated that he had violated Article Penal Code 415 of the California statute, which was disturbing the peace disorderly. Well, let's talk about that. Under that same penal code, disturbing the peace, which he stated, 415, it says unlawful fighting in public places. Well, that's not what we see here, other than what Ruiz was doing to the citizen, the off-duty police officer, making loud and unreasonable noise. We can talk about that a little bit. And using offensive words in public likely to provoke an immediate violent reaction. So we're going to go into that a little bit more, because where does the First Amendment line stop with the California State Code? Well, we know the constitutional rights are always going to be over any state law, but I don't even think we have that situation here. I think there's a clear difference in distinguishment we must make. So let's see what that distinguishment is. So we look at this. California Penal Code 415 prohibits a person from disturbing the peace of another. The offense consists of three elements: unlawful fighting in a public place, which is engaging in or attempting to engage in a fight in public location. That's not what Mr. Valdez did. Loud and unreasonable noise, maliciously and willfully making noise that is excessive and disruptive. I'm sure someone will argue that point, but let's see if it fits. And offensive words in public, using words in public place that are likely to provoke an immediate violent actions. So since we didn't have it captured about the tone in which he was using under California statute, I can see the argument being made that he was loud, but I don't see where it will fit that it would enact violence. See, you can cuss at someone, you can raise your voice, and it still can be annoying and not violate the law because you're allowed to do so under the Constitution. And that's the thing that is interesting about this particular incident. But let's go a little bit deeper about this public peace. What does the court say about it? In general, order, calm, and safety of a community, this is what the courts look at this and evaluate it. The volume and intensity, loud, aggressive, or persistent behavior, alarming people, public setting, locates streets or parks, reactions of others cause fear, panic, or aggression, intent or recklessness if it was the intent to disturb peace or reckless disregard. Well, based on the information we know, we have a situation here. He was frustrated by not being able to park, that he was trying to do what? Reckless disregard of risk. That didn't seem applicable. I don't think his cursing should cause fear, panic, or aggression. And the volume intensity, he maybe was loud. Maybe some might even deem that aggressive. But you got to get all these elements, not just cherry pick the ones that you think fit. So right now, there is no evidence based on what we know that he met the qualifications and elements for even disturbing the peace, even by the court's evaluations. So I want to go a little bit further and I want to look at this and let's talk about his side of the story coming up. So let's see what else happened and let's break that down and talk about that. Check this out.
You guys put them, sir?
No,
Mind if I check?
no. He can.
Oh, we can too.
No, you can't.
Yes, we can.
No.
Yes, we can. I have identified myself, and so is he.
No, you do not.
Yes, I did.
Quit touching me.
Continued escalation by Jacob Ruiz, the officer that's off duty. I'm looking at this just like you're looking at it. No time I have seen him show his badge. If he did show it, then he showed it a de minimis amount of times because he spent more time pushing and shoving and now telling him that he's going to check him and search him. Has anyone heard you're detained yet or you're arrested during this whole conversation? I haven't. So even if this was started recording halfway through, from the time frame that we've been watching, there's been plenty of opportunities for that to happen. And here's another question. What we heard in the background here was this officer here, the Shasta County Sheriff's Deputy, who was also off duty, who asked Mr. Valdez, does he have any weapons on him? And then he asked him, can I search you? He asked for a consensual search. Now, why would this officer ask for a consensual search if it was his belief that Mr. Valdez was detained at the time in which this occurred or under arrest? Because he was going through, naturally, seeing a person who has been pushed and shoved by Officer Ruiz from the Reading Police Department, but no one put this man in detention. No one has said, while we've been watching, sir, you are now detained. And even if he was detained, what was the lawful reason for detaining him? Was it the 415 Penal Code where he's detaining him for disturbance of peace? Was it the obstruction charge, 148, that he had started to state? Well, these are not applicable if he started also to state that the reason for his actions as a police officer, because he wanted him to stay away from the women and children. That is not a legal justified reason for him to have the actions of putting his hands on a citizen. That is his personal preference. He can, as a citizen, raise his voice and yell profanities toward those individuals without violating any type of law. And I think this was a overreach by Officer Ruiz. So now we're going to go back to the Shasta police officer who was there helping and see how this ended and break this down.
I did not do nothing. Would you like me to get on the ground? Would you like me to... You're hurting me. I can't breathe. I am not. I am not resisting.
You are resisting.
No, I'm not.
You didn't listen. I told you to leave multiple times.
I was waiting for my wife.
You could have waited down the road, and you refused.
It's a public place.
It's not a public place when you own young kids. Those are children. Those are young children.
No, they're not.
Yes, they are. Like you guys are gonna.
Yeah, I'm with them.
Truth shall set you free. Officer Jacob Ruiz, in the end, circles back. And that one little statement speaks volumes about the whole circumstance. It was not about Penal Code 415, Penal Code 148 for obstruction or disorderly conduct, disturbing the peace, all the things that he said. He said, this place is public. That's what Valdez said, the citizen. And in response, Officer Jacob Ruiz says, it's not public when you are cursing at women and children. So the issue was his cursing and who it was directed at. Government employees and individuals in a government-run program acting on the behest of the Reading Police Department. Now, that was clear. And we just walked through Valdez's arrest at this point. But I want to hear from Valdez and his side of the story so we can have a better complete picture. So this is what Valdez said, and then we'll break this down as well so we can understand what he said occurred. Check it out.
Here's where we parked last year. I watched 4 cars pull out, and they refused to let me go in or turn around.
Reading police say Valdez started yelling at RPD Explorers, which are 14 to 21-year-old volunteers with the department, about parking in the lot. 2 female RPD community service officers stepped in. Police claim he was yelling profanities at all 4 and refusing to move. Valdez denies this.
Did you, in that initial interaction, they claim, I think you were yelling, you were shouting at them?
I did not in the initial interaction while we were in the car.
He claims after about a minute of back and forth with the group, the off-duty officer approached and yelled something at him and his wife, but all he heard was move or get arrested. Valdez drove off and parked further away. When they walked back, they saw cars being let in.
When I came back, I watched her let about 8 people in, which is, it's only like a 2-minute walk from around the corner, and I cussed her out.
Valdez admits he was angry about being blocked from using the lot he felt others were using freely. Reading police say the off-duty officer saw Valdez come back and start aggressively accosting the 2 CSOs and volunteer explorers, flashed his police ID, and told him to leave.
He lifts his shirt up, which he had his firearm tucked in here, and he flashed his wallet, no badge, but I can't see that close because I need glasses.
Valdez says the off-duty officer continued to shove and yell at him while he tried to leave. Police say a uniformed officer and an off-duty Shasta deputy both arrived soon after, claiming Valdez did not comply with commands, which led to his arrest.
For him, on that video, call it in, 1 in custody for 415. So you can hear him reporting that I was in custody, but you can never hear him give any commands prior to that.
Reading Police Chief Brian Barner confirmed the initial use of force review found the off-duty officer did not violate department policy. Valdez claims that while he was booked and charged, the Shasta County District Attorney's Office has still not filed any charges in the case.
Now we've heard both sides of the story, and it's very clear with Valdez's reenactment about what happened in his version of events. It aligns more so than what the police statements occurred. We watched what we watched. We saw what we saw. And Valdez says and admits that his interaction with them and the explorers of the Reading Police Department, he did curse them out on the second interaction, not the first one. So they told him he can't park there. They did not trespass him at that time, based on the statements of both police and Valdez. He reparked, and the issue was he came back and he started cussing at them. He cussed at government employees. Whether they liked it or not, it's within his right to do so. Now, how do we know that it's his right to do so? We often say the First Amendment. Let me share with you why, other than the First Amendment, that I can tell you that it was his right to do so. And that will bring you to the incorporation doctrine. The First Amendment applies to the states, through the 14th Amendment's Due Process Clause. This case was one of the earliest to incorporate religious freedom protections to apply to state governments, not just federal. Now, what case is it talking about? I'm about to get to, but the incorporation doctrine of the 14th Amendment is what applies the First Amendment to all the states. So his First Amendment rights to free speech is applicable in California, regardless of what California state law may or may not have on a state level. What's confusing is a lot of times we got to understand the courts are what going to decide these things while it's happening. In the course of it, people are trying to determine who is right, who is wrong, and standing on your rights. But most of the things that we have to debate are going to be in court, and that's the place where we should debate it, not on the scene, not at the time. But let's go into that, and let's talk about this incorporation doctrine. So the incorporation doctrine, the First Amendment applies to states through this 14th Amendment's Due Process Clause. This case was one of the earliest to incorporate religious freedom protections to apply to state governments, not just federal. That's Cantwell versus Connecticut, 1940, defining public peace in the First Amendment law. So I want you to understand this Cantwell versus Connecticut, 1940. It talked about this exact circumstance. It talked about a person who had a right to speak, and it was defined by disturbing the peace and how that was applicable within the guidance of the First Amendment. 1940, Cantwell versus Connecticut. And it determined, this case in the Supreme Court determined that the First Amendment, which was for federal aid at first, now can be applied through the 14th Amendment to all the 50 states. Now, that is why Mr. Valdez was in the right in this situation. Now, going a little bit further to give you more information about this landmark case that you need to remember, Cantwell versus Connecticut, 1940, defining public peace in the First Amendment law. Now, let me say this. Why am I bringing this up? Because when Officer Jacob Ruiz stated, and he was arresting the person we saw, Valdez, under Penal Code 415, it was disturbing the peace. He started off with instructing officials, which was 148 under the California Penal Code, and then they somehow landed on disturbing the peace. And this Supreme Court case from 1940 talks about the weighing and evaluating disturbing the peace with the First Amendment, and let's see what the tenets of that would be. Well, the Supreme Court justice made this quote: "In every case where offensive speech is punished to protect, quote, public peace, the threat must be more than subjective. It must involve clear and present danger of a serious, substantive evil that rises far above public inconvenience, annoyance, or unrest." Woo! You cannot beat that, folks. And think about that quote. That is a beautiful quote, right? And at the bottom, here's four things. It is not enough for annoyance or offensive language. So Valdez being annoying to those CSOs and those 14 to 21-year-old explorers, as Jacob Ruiz says, the women and the children, it is not enough that he was annoying to them, or it was offensive that he cursed at them. What's required is clear and present danger. Mr. Valdez cursing cannot be articulated from anything that's even been seen or shown to show a clear and present danger other than being called a bad word that offended you. And then protected speech, whether it's religious speech or even if it's provocative speech, it is okay and protected under the First Amendment. And then finally, the rule must show real, not imagined threat for safety. What was the real threat to safety that Mr. Valdez gave by cussing them out? He gave them a good old ringing. He cussed them out from the rooter to the tutor. What was the safety issue? there wasn't one. So this was the court case, Cantel versus Connecticut 1940, that justified the First Amendment. So we already got the First Amendment that justified his actions. Then we got the Supreme Court case in 1940. But just in case people want to say, was there anything even more present? Another case, which was Watchtower Bible and Tract Society versus Village of Stratton in 2022, reinforced the Cantwell case by striking down permit requirements for religious speech. So the reason I'm bringing this up, was this about religious speech? No, this was about the ability to say things offensive that are not fighting words, that you may not like and may annoy you, that Mr. Valdez did. And under the law, Mr. Valdez was completely in the right. So in regards to his First Amendment or disturbing the peace, although he was arrested for obstruction and for disturbing the peace and for all the things they said, the reason likely that the local district attorney's office has not charged Mr. Valdez, because they're seeing the same thing I'm seeing here. This is a circumstance where the police officer overreached and the First Amendment constitutional rights were violated, and other rights by Mr. Valdez, from search and seizure. When they asked if they consent to search his body, he said no, and to the rest of the things that we watched. So this was a big one, and this was an example of why we need to know our rights. And accountability is not just for the police, it's also for the citizens. Empower yourself. Don't litigate on the side of the road. If your rights have been violated, the court systems are made for this very thing. But know what rights have been violated, and know when you have to change your trajectory and what you're doing to stay safe. Well, thank you for watching, everyone. Until next time, this has been the Underdog Research Channel, Police and Citizen Encounters. Thank you. See you soon.